Hey everyone, welcome back to Smart Architectural Programming, where we make coding simple, smart, and structured. In this video, we're going to focus on another topic of Java. And this topic of Java, you'll notice I'm mentioning chapter again because this video is part of our Introduction to Java companion series. And today we're diving deep into two key control flow tools in Java, which is while loop and do while loop. Remember, if you're following along the book, you need to read chapter 5 before or after this book to get the most out of this video and the most out of the knowledge, fundamental knowledge that you want to gain regarding Java. So without further ado, let's push ahead and focus on what while and do while loops in Java. So let's focus on first is what are loops, right? Loops, simply speaking, are basically allow you to execute a block of code repeatedly based on a certain condition. So if a certain condition, you test for a certain condition, if that condition is true, the code within that block keeps on running until that condition becomes false, basically. So that is how you can define a loop and what they are. So let's quickly move on to the main focus of this video, which is while and do while loops. And first we'll start with the while loops, which is the basic concept on the while loops. The while loops checks the condition before running the code block. If the condition is true, it runs. If it's false, it skips. You can see the structure of the while loop right in the middle of the screen under the heading. While we have a while statement here, which is the keyword to run this run while loop. Then we have the condition in the bracket, whatever that condition may be, I less than 5, I greater than 5, something being true or something being false. And within these curly braces that you see here, in this green portion, which is a comment, we write the code that executes when this condition is true and keeps on running, basically. So the while loop has a structure like this. It checks the condition. If the condition is true, it runs the loop. It goes back to the condition. If the condition is no, then it exits loops. Otherwise, it just keeps on running the loop until the condition becomes, false, basically. Now that we understand a while loop, let's focus and understand, focus on basically an example of the while loops, right? So let's see it in action here. The loop keeps running as long as the count is greater than 0 in this code, as you can see. Once it hits 0, then the loop exits. Remember, be careful if you forget to update the condition inside the loop. It can run forever, so always be mindful of setting up a condition and an exit condition code. Always remember there must be a code that leads to the exit condition of the while loop, otherwise it would always run. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next thing, which is do while loops. In do while loops, which are usually similar to while loops, but it has a key difference. It runs the code first and then checks the condition. That means it always runs at least once, basically. So in the previous while loop, you've noticed we check the condition first and then run the code. Here we've the do while keyword here. So the do keyword here runs the code in the curly braces first and then uses the while keyword and then the condition to check for the condition. So the condition is checked after the code is run, and that is how do while loops work. So if you can look at the flow here, code block runs, then the condition is checked. If it's yes, it repeats. If it's no, it exits, basically. So that's how do while loops work. Let's look at a real world example of do while loops here as well. As you can see in the screen here, we're using the same code that we used in the while loops, as it looks pretty similar if you focus on it. But check this out. If this basically, in this code, basically we're running the do code first, so we'll have an additional print statement of 5, right? So 5 would be printed out first, and so on and so forth, right? So that's how do while loop looks. Similarly, if you want to start the count at 0, you could do that as well, basically, and it would at least print once. Unlike the while loop, if we had the counter at 0, it won't run. But here it would run and print 0, unlike the while loops, basically. And even here, if it would add a print, as I mentioned earlier, additional 0 at the end of it, because do while loops give us the ability to do that, basically. So with that, let's move on when to use which loop, basically. It's pretty simple. So when you should use while loop is basically when you might not want the code to run at all if the condition is false from the start. And when you want to use the do while loop is when you need to run the code at least once, like prompting a user until they give a valid input. So keep these things in mind. Otherwise, I think you have all you need to understand what do while and while loops are in Java. So but let's give a few bonus tips here as well. So some of the common mistakes that you'll find in Java is basically infinite loops, as I mentioned earlier. Don't forget to update your loop variable. Always consider to make sure you update the variable that controls or which is part of the condition that runs the loop. So to make sure that you are modifying that condition when the code is run every time, so that there is a certain point when the condition becomes untrue and you exit the loop. Number 2, always remember that don't put in the wrong condition, because if the condition is wrong, it won't eventually be false. So your condition must always eventually result in a false, just like the above. Otherwise, it would become an infinite loop. And number 3, test edge cases. Try inputs that barely pass or barely fail your condition to basically make sure that all aspects of the code are tested for the while loop, and while loop is tested to tested to basically cover all positions. So with that, we've wrapped up. I think we've wrapped up this topic. At this point, I'm going to give you a challenge, right? So try writing a program that asks a user for a password using a do-while loop and keeps asking until they get it right. Drop your code in the comments and let's check it out. Who writes the best code? So with that, let's wrap up. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Smart Architectural Programming and check out our Introduction to Java book for more hands-on learning. Loops are just the beginning, and we've got much more ahead to cover. With that, thanks for watching, and remember, keep coding smart.